Dr. Elena Rodriguez rubbed her tired eyes and stared at the screen again. She had been working for 16 hours straight in the small research room of the Kepler station. The space station floated quietly around Earth's moon, far from the noise and lights of home. Lena's job was to listen to space. Most days, she heard nothing but empty static and the distant hum of stars. But today was different. Jake Harrison, station's communication officer, floated into the room. His face looked excited. "Elena, you need to see this," he said, pushing himself toward her workstation. In space, everything floated, and Jake had learned to move carefully after 3 years on the station. "What is it?" Elena asked. She was tired and wanted to sleep, but Jake's voice made her pay attention. "Remember that signal we picked up from Vega 3 weeks ago?" Jake pulled up a new screen. I've been running it through every filter we have. Look at this." Elena looked at the patterns on the screen. At first, they looked like random noise. But as she studied them closer, she saw something that made her heart beat faster. There were patterns, real patterns. Not the kind that stars make, or the kind that machines make by accident. These patterns looked like they meant something. "It is not natural," Elena whispered. She had spent her whole life studying languages and communication. She knew the difference between random signals and real messages. This was a real message. Lisa Carter, the station's science officer, joined them. She was young, but very smart about space and stars. "I've been watching the Vega system for the past month," she said. "Something strange is happening there. There are energy readings that don't make sense. Big energy readings." Elena felt excitement and fear at the same time. For years, humans had wondered if they were alone in the universe. They had sent radio signals into space, hoping someone would answer. They had listened carefully to every sound from the stars, but they had never heard anything back, until now. "Jake, can you clean up this signal more?" Lena asked. Jake worked. At his computer for an hour, slowly, the fuzzy patterns became clearer. Elena watched as numbers appeared, then shapes. Then something that looked almost like words, but not in any language she knew. "My God," Elena said quietly, "is definitely a message from someone. Someone who is not human." The three of them worked together for the next week. Elena used her knowledge of languages to study the patterns. Lisa studied the science behind the signal. Jake worked on making the message clearer and stronger. What they found changed everything. The message was not random. It had a clear beginning, middle, and end. It used mathematics that any smart species would understand. It had pictures made of numbers that showed star maps. But most important, it had something that made Elena's hands shake when she finally understood it. It was asking for help. The message said things like "danger coming," "need friends," and "please answer if you hear this." Elena worked day and night to translate more of it. The aliens called themselves the Volari. They said they were peaceful people who traveled between stars to trade with others. They said something terrible was hunting them. "Look at this part," Elena told Jake and Lisa. She pointed to a section of the message that had taken her 3 days to understand. "They're not just asking for help. They're telling us how to find them. They sent star maps. They sent pictures of their ships. They want us to come to them." Lisa studied the star maps. These coordinates point to the Vega system. It's about 25 light years from Earth. With our fastest ships, it would take decades to get there. Elena kept working on the message. What she found next made her feel sick to her stomach. The message had a timestamp. The Volari had sent this message over a year ago, but there was more. Elena found other messages, newer ones, that were much shorter. The newer messages were more desperate. They said things like ships destroyed and many dead and running out of time. The last message Elena translated made her cry. "We have waited so long to find friends among the stars," the message said. "We are peaceful people. We only wanted to meet others like us, to share knowledge and stories. But instead we found death. If anyone hears this, please know that we tried to be good. We tried to help others. We never wanted to hurt anyone. Please, if you can hear us, remember us. Remember that we were here." Then the messages stopped. Elena ran to find Admiral Paul Bennett, the commander of Earth Defense Command. The admiral was a big man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had spent his life protecting Earth from dangers, but he had never dealt with anything like this. Admiral Alina said, trying not to cry. You need to see this. We received messages from space, from aliens. They were asking for help, and now they might be dead. Admiral Bennett looked at the translated messages. He read them twice, then he was quiet for a long time. Are you sure about this, Dr. Rodriguez? He asked finally. Are you sure these messages are real? Yes, sir. I've checked everything 100 times. These messages are real. There were people out there and they needed help, and we didn't know in time to save them. Admiral Bennett called his best scientists and military officers. They studied Elena's work for a week. They all agreed that the messages were real. They also agreed on something else that was very scary. Lisa's scans of the Vega system showed that something terrible had happened there. The energy readings showed massive explosions. It's the kind of explosions that could destroy entire planets. Whatever had been hunting the Valari had found them. But Alina found one more thing. Hidden in the last messages were other signals, weaker signals from different places. Other Valari colonies that were still alive, still calling for help, still hoping that someone would hear them and come to save them. They're still out there, Alina told Admiral Bennett. Some of them are still alive. They're still sending messages, still asking for friends, and we're the only ones who can hear them. Admiral Bennett looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were dying. People who had never hurt anyone. People who had only wanted to make friends. Dr. Rodriguez, he said slowly, how long would it take our fastest ship to reach the nearest Valari colony? Alina had already calculated this. 18 months, sir? If we used the new fusion drives and didn't worry about coming back. Didn't worry about coming back? We could carry enough fuel to get there, but not enough to make the return trip. Anyone who goes would be stuck there. Admiral Bennett was quiet again. Then he picked up his phone. Get me President Morrison, he said. Tell her it's about first contact with alien life. Tell her it's urgent. Lena went back to her station and kept listening. More messages came from the Valari colonies. They were getting weaker. The aliens were running out of power, running out of hope. But they kept broadcasting, kept calling into the dark of space, hoping that somewhere, someone would hear them and care enough to help. Alina listened to their voices across the vast emptiness between stars. She heard their fear, their sadness, their hope. She heard them calling for friends, and she knew that Earth had to answer. President Julia Morrison had not slept in 2 days. She sat in the big meeting room in the White House, looking at the faces of world leaders on screens around her. Everyone looked tired and worried. On the table in front of her lay the translated messages from the Valari, printed on dozens of pages. Ladies and gentlemen, President Morrison said to the screens, we are here to make the most important decision in human history. Dr. Rodriguez, please explain what you found one more time. Alina stood at the front of the room. She had flown from the moon station to Earth as fast as possible. Her hands shook as she held the microphone. 3 weeks ago, we received signals from an alien species called the Valari. They were peaceful traders who traveled between stars. Something was hunting them. Something was killing them. They sent out calls for help to anyone who might be listening. The president of China leaned forward on his screen. You are certain these messages are real? Yes, sir. We have verified everything. The mathematics, the star charts, the language patterns. These messages are from real people who lived in the Vega system. And sir, they are all dead now. Our telescopes show that. Their planets have been destroyed. The room was quiet for a long time. The Prime Minister of Britain spoke first. Dr. Rodriguez, you said there might be other colonies still alive? Alina nodded. Yes, ma'am. We have detected weaker signals from at least 6 other star systems. The Valari had many colonies. Some of them are still broadcasting, still asking for help. But the signals are getting weaker every day. General Marcus Cole, the head of Earth's military forces, stood up. He was a big man who had fought in many wars. With respect, Mr. President, this could be a trap. We don't know what really killed these aliens. We don't know if it's safe for humans to go out there. Captain Ryan Murphy stepped forward. He was younger than the general, but everyone knew he was one of Earth's best space pilots. General Cole, I understand your concern, but I've read these messages. These people died calling for friends. They shared their technology with us, hoping it would help. Does that sound like a trap to you? Captain Murphy pointed to a screen showing pictures of Volari ships and technology. Look at what they sent us. Complete blueprints for their engines, their computers, their weapons. They gave us everything they had, hoping someone would use it to help them or to help others. Dr. Rodriguez spoke again. Captain Murphy is right. The Volari didn't just ask for help. They tried to help us. Even while they were dying, they sent us knowledge. They sent us star maps. They sent us everything we would need to find them. President Morrison looked around the room. Captain Murphy, you said you wanted to volunteer for a rescue mission. Tell us about your plan. Captain Murphy moved to the big screen and showed pictures of Earth's newest spaceship. The UES Endeavour is our most advanced ship. It has fusion engines and the best shields we've ever built. Using the Volari technology, we could improve it even more. The ship could carry 200 people to the nearest Volari colony in 18 months. General Cole shook his head. Captain, that's a one-way trip. We don't have enough fuel technology to get a ship there and back. Everyone who goes would be stuck there forever. I know, sir, Captain Murphy said quietly. But isn't that better than letting innocent people die when we could help them? The Secretary of Defense spoke from her seat. Captain, we don't even know if any Volari are still alive. You could be flying into empty space. Alina stepped forward again. Ma'am, I received a new message just this morning. It was very weak, but I could translate it. A Volari colony in the Wolf system is still alive. They have about 3,000 people hiding on a moon. They're running out of food and air. The message said they have maybe 6 months left. She paused and looked around the room. The message also said something else. It said we know someone is listening now. You can tell that our signals are being received. Please, if you are friends, come quickly. We have children here. Many people in the room looked down at their hands. President Morrison felt tears in her eyes. Somewhere in space, alien children were dying, and their parents knew that someone was listening but not helping. The president of Russia spoke from his screen. Dr. Rodriguez, what exactly killed the Volari? Do we know what we would be fighting? Alina showed pictures that made everyone feel scared. Volari called them the Swarm. From what I can translate, they are massive ships that appear without warning. They destroy everything and take all the resources from planets. The Volari had never seen anything like them before. Their weapons couldn't hurt the swarm ships. Captain Murphy studied the pictures, but the Volari were peaceful traders. Their ships were built for carrying goods, not for fighting. Human ships are different. We've been building warships for hundreds of years. General Cole looked angry. Captain, these swarm ships destroyed entire planets. What makes you think our weapons would work better? 'Cause we're not peaceful traders, sir. Captain Murphy said humans have been fighting wars since the beginning of time. We know how to build weapons. We know how to fight. The Volari never learned those things because they never needed to. Dr. Rodriguez nodded. Captain Murphy is right. In their messages, the Volari talked about trying to negotiate with the Swarm. They tried to offer trade agreements, tried to surrender. The Swarm ignored them and kept attacking. The Volari didn't understand how to fight an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with. President Morrison stood up. Let me understand this clearly. You want to send 200 volunteers on a one-way trip to fight an enemy that destroyed an entire civilization? Yes, ma'am, Captain Murphy said. Because it's the right thing to do. The room was quiet again. Then Lisa Carter, who had come from the moon station with Alina, spoke up. She was nervous but determined. Mr. President, I want to volunteer too. I'm a scientist, not a soldier. But those people need help. They called for friends, and friends don't let each other die alone. Alina stepped forward. I volunteer as well. I'm the only person who can fully communicate with the Volari. There. Our survivors, they'll need someone who can talk to them. One by one, other people in the room began to volunteer. Engineers, doctors, soldiers, scientists, all of them willing to leave Earth forever to help strangers they had never met. General Cole looked around the room in surprise. You're all talking about suicide. Even if you could fight off this swarm, You'd be stuck on an alien world with no way home. Captain Murphy smiled. General, my grandfather fought in World War II. He told me something when I was young, he said, that some things are more important than coming home safe. Some things are worth dying for, Lena added. The Valari died hoping someone would hear their call for friends. We heard them. We can't ignore them now. President Morrison looked at all the screens showing world leaders. We need to vote. All in favor of Operation Starreach. One by one, every leader voted yes. Even General Cole, though he looked worried. Motion passes, President Morrison said. Captain Murphy, how long do you need to prepare? 3 months to modify the ship and train the crew, ma'am. We'll use the Valari technology to make our weapons and shields stronger. We'll pack medical supplies, construction equipment, and enough food for a year. Lena felt excited and scared at the same time. Mr. President, I want to send a message back to the surviving Valari colonies. I want to tell them that help is coming. What will you say, Dr. Rodriguez? Alina thought for a moment. I'll tell them that they called for friends, and friends are coming. I'll tell them to hold on just a little longer. I'll tell them that they're not alone anymore, President. Morrison nodded. Send the message, Doctor, and may God help us all. 3 months later, the UES Endeavour sat on the launch pad, ready for humanity's first journey to another star. 200 volunteers had said goodbye to their families and friends. They all knew they would never see Earth again, but they also knew that somewhere in the darkness of space, people were waiting for friends to arrive. And humans had never been good at letting friends down. Captain Ryan Murphy felt the UES Endeavour shake as it dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vega system. After 18 long months of travel, they had finally arrived. He floated to the bridge window and looked out at the alien star system. That had been calling for help. What he saw made his blood turn cold. Lisa, get me a full scan of the system, Captain Murphy called to Commander Lisa Carter, who was now his science officer. Want to know what we're looking at. Lisa worked at her station, her face growing pale as data filled her screens. Captain, this is not what we expected. The system isn't dead. There are massive ships everywhere, ships bigger than anything we've ever built. Dr. Elena Rodriguez floated over to look at the scans. She had spent the entire journey learning more Valari language and preparing for first contact, but nothing had prepared her for this. Those ships, she whispered. They're not Valari ships. They're too big, too different. On the main screen, they could see huge dark shapes moving slowly around the planets. The ships looked like they were made of metal and something that might be alive. They were at least 10 miles long, with strange parts that moved like arms or tentacles. Captain, said Lieutenant Brandon Lee from the weapons station. I'm counting at least 50 large ships and hundreds of smaller ones. They're doing something to the planets. Captain Murphy watched as beams of light shot down from the big ships to the planet's surfaces. Where the beams hit, huge chunks of rock and metal were lifted up into space and pulled into the ships. They're mining the planets, he said. They're taking everything. Lena studied the alien ships more carefully. These must be the swarm that the Valari talked about. But they're not just destroying everything. They're harvesting it. Taking it all for themselves. Lisa ran more scans and found something that changed everything. Captain, I'm getting life. Signs from Vega Prime's moon? Weak signals, but definitely there. They're underground. Lena felt her heart start beating fast. The Valari, some of them are still alive. Captain Murphy made a quick decision. Lisa, can we get a small team too? That moon without the big ships seeing us? Maybe, sir. If we use the transport pods and stay close to the asteroid belt, we might be able to sneak in, but it would be very dangerous. I'll lead the team, Alina said immediately. If there are Valari down there, they'll need someone who can talk to them. 2 hours later, Alina sat in a small transport pod with 5 other crew members. The pod was barely big enough for 6 people, but it was fast and hard to see on enemy scanners. They flew carefully through the asteroid belt, hiding behind rocks and floating metal chunks. As they got closer to the moon, they could see more details of what the swarm was doing. The big ships weren't just mining. They had smaller ships that looked like they were hunting something. The smaller ships would fly down to planets and moons, then come back up carrying things that looked like buildings or vehicles. They're collecting everything, whispered Sergeant Danny Price, the team's security officer. Not just metals and rocks. They're taking anything that was built by living beings. Alina felt sick. They're not just destroying civilizations. They're collecting them, like trophies. The transport pod landed in a deep crater on the dark side of the moon. Alina and her team put on their spacesuits and walked carefully toward the location where Lisa had detected life signs. They found a hidden entrance that looked like it had been carved by hand. Inside, they discovered tunnels that led deep underground. The tunnels were dark and cold, but they could hear something that made Elena's heart jump with hope. They could hear voices. Alien voices speaking in the Valari language she had learned. Elena activated her translation device and called out in Valari words. "Hello! We are friends from Earth. We heard your messages. We came to help." The voices stopped. Then they heard footsteps running toward them. A group of tall, thin beings appeared from the shadows. They had skin that looked like it was made of crystal, and it changed colors as they moved. Alina knew. From the messages that this meant they were feeling strong emotions, the leader of the group stepped forward. He was taller than the others, and his crystal skin was glowing with blue and gold colors. When he spoke, Elena's translation device turned his words into English. "You came," he said, and his voice was full of wonder and disbelief. "We called into the darkness for so long, and you came. I am Zenthka, leader of the survivors on this moon." Alina removed her helmet so Zenthka could see her face. "I am Dr. Alina Rodriguez from the planet Earth. We received your messages. We came as fast as we could." Zenthka's skin changed to bright gold, which Alina knew meant happiness and hope. "Earth, we sent our calls to so many stars, hoping someone would hear. You are the first to answer." Alina felt tears in her eyes. "Zenthka, we're sorry we couldn't come sooner. We heard your people's final messages from the homeworlds. We know what happened to them." Zenthka's skin turned dark purple, which meant sadness. "Yes, the harvesters came without warning. Our people tried to talk to them, tried to offer them trade agreements and friendship. But the harvesters do not talk. They only take." Sergeant Price looked around the tunnels. "How many of you are left?" "On this moon, perhaps 3,000. Across all the surviving colonies, maybe 20,000 total. Once we were millions." Zenthka led them deeper into the tunnels. "We have been hiding here for 2 years. Food is running out. Our power systems are failing. We thought we would all die here, alone and forgotten." Alina saw hundreds of Valari in the deeper tunnels, adults, children, elderly ones. They all looked thin and tired. Their crystal skin was mostly gray, which meant they were very sad and scared. But when they saw the humans, their colors began to change to blues and greens. "They're happy to see you," Zenthka explained. "For so long we believed we were the only intelligent life in the galaxy besides the harvesters. Your arrival proves that there is still good in the universe." Lena sat down with Zenthka to learn more about their enemy. What he told her was terrifying. "The harvesters are ancient," Zenthka said. "They have been crossing the galaxy for thousands of years. They find civilized worlds and consume everything. They take all the metal, all the organic matter, all the technology. Then they move on to the next system." "But why?" Alina asked. "What do they want?" "We don't know. They don't communicate. They don't negotiate. They simply arrive, harvest everything, and leave. In all our history, we'd never heard of anyone who survived a harvester attack." Sergeant Price studied the data. Zenthka shared with them. "According to this, the harvesters have destroyed hundreds of civilizations, maybe thousands, and no one has ever fought them successfully." "Ain't no one," Zenthka confirmed. "Most species try to run when the harvesters arrive. Some try to hide like we did. Few try to fight, but their weapons are not effective against harvester technology." Lena felt a chill run down her spine. "Zenthka, what makes harvester ships so hard to destroy? They seem to absorb energy weapons and turn the energy into power for themselves. Physical weapons like rockets or bullets pass through their shields as if they were not there. And they repair damage very quickly, as if their ships are alive." Back on the UES Endeavor, Captain Murphy listened to Elena's report with growing concern. The enemy they faced was unlike anything humans had ever fought. But as he studied the data about Harvester ships and tactics, he began to notice something interesting. "Brandon," he called to his weapons officer, "look at these attack patterns. Notice anything strange?" Lieutenant Lee studied the data. "Sir, it looks like the Harvesters expect their enemies to either run away or surrender quickly. Their tactics are designed to scare civilizations into giving up." "Exactly. Look at their ship designs. Those energy absorption systems work. Great against standard laser and plasma weapons. But what about kinetic weapons? What about ramming attacks?" Lisa looked up from her science station. "Captain, are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" Captain Murphy smiled grimly. "The Harvesters have been fighting civilized species for thousands of years. Species that fight by rules and try to minimize casualties. They've never fought humans." Elena's voice came over the radio from the moon's surface. "Captain, there's something else. Zenthka says the Harvesters keep their victims alive for a while before harvesting them. They seem to study each species before consuming them. But they've never encountered a species like humans before." "What do you mean?" Captain Murphy asked. "The Valarian, every other species the Harvesters fought, were peaceful. They evolved on safe worlds where the biggest danger was bad weather or natural disasters. Humans evolved on a death world where everything was trying to kill them. The Harvesters have never fought a species that considers warfare an art form." Captain Murphy looked around his bridge at his crew. They were all thinking the same thing. The Harvesters might be ancient and powerful, but they had made one mistake. They had threatened species that humans considered friends, and humans had never been very good at letting their friends get hurt. "Lena," Captain Murphy said into his radio, "tell Zenthka that the cavalry has arrived. Tell him that humans fight very differently than the Harvesters are used to. The first battle between humans and the Harvesters happened by accident. Commander Sandra Phillips was leading a supply run to the Valari survivors when 3 Harvester scout ships detected her transport group. The enemy ships were each 3 times larger than her biggest transport, and their weapons could destroy planets. The Harvesters expected the human ships to run away or surrender, just like every other species had done for thousands of years. Instead, Sandra did something that shocked everyone, including her own crew. She ordered her ships to ram the enemy vessels at full speed. "Commander, that's suicide." Her co-pilot yelled as their transport ship accelerated directly toward the nearest Harvester. "Maybe," Sandra replied, "but these things killed our friends. And humans don't run from bullies." The first transport hit the Harvester ship's side at maximum velocity. The human ship was destroyed instantly, but something unexpected happened. The Harvester ship, which had absorbed energy weapons easily, was badly damaged by the physical impact. Its strange biomechanical hull cracked open, spilling green liquid into space. The other 2 human transports followed Sandra's lead. Within minutes, all 3 Harvester scouts were floating dead in space, while the humans had lost only 1 ship. It was the first time in galactic history that anyone had successfully destroyed Harvester vessels. Back on the UES Endeavor, Captain Murphy watched the battle recordings with amazement. "They weren't expecting that," he said to his officers. "Their shields stop energy, but they can't handle solid mass hitting them at high speed." Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had returned from the moon with detailed information from Zenthka, studied the data. "The Valari told me something important about Harvester psychology. They're a hive mind. All their ships are controlled by the same intelligence. They make decisions based on thousands of years of fighting the same types of enemies." Lieutenant Brandon Lee looked up from his weapons station, so they had no experience fighting crazy humans who ram ships into them. "Exactly. And there's something else. The Valari said Harvesters always give their enemies a chance to surrender because they want to study each species before harvesting them. They try to scare civilizations into giving up without a real fight." Captain Murphy understood immediately. "But humans don't scare easily. We definitely don't surrender when our friends are in danger." Alina had been working with a Valari scientist named Keth Va to understand more about human biology compared to other species. What they discovered was shocking. "Captain, you need to see this." Keth Va ran tests on human blood samples and compared them to samples from 12 other species that the Harvesters have destroyed. She showed data on the main screen. Every other species in the galaxy evolved on what we would call paradise. Worlds, stable climates, few predators, abundant food. They developed intelligence to solve problems like resource management and social cooperation. And humans. Captain Murphy asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Humans evolved on what Kethve calls a death world, a planet where almost everything was trying to kill them. Humans developed intelligence to survive constant threats, or built differently than any other species in the galaxy. Kethve, who had learned some English, spoke through the translation device. Your species heals from injuries that would kill most others. Can fight with broken bones and torn muscles. You can survive blood loss that would make a Velarai unconscious. Most importantly, you become more dangerous when you are hurt or cornered. Alina continued the explanation. The Harvester's biomechanical systems are designed to harvest and process standard galactic life forms, but human DNA contains sequences that are actually toxic to their absorption systems. Our blood chemistry is so aggressive that it poisons their living technology. Sergeant Danny Price, who had been listening from the security station, started laughing. So, we're literally poisonous to them? In a way, yes, but there's more. Humans keep fighting with injuries that would stop other species completely. Harvesters have never encountered a species that fights harder when it's losing. Captain Murphy realized what this meant for their mission. We're not just here to rescue the Valari. Here to do something no other species has ever done. We're here to show the galaxy that the Harvesters can be beaten. The proof came during the next battle. A group of Harvester ships surrounded a small Valari colony ship that was trying to escape the system. Captain Murphy led a squadron of modified fighters to help. The Harvester ships tried their usual tactics. They showed overwhelming force and waited for the humans to retreat or surrender. When that didn't work, they fired warning shots with their massive energy weapons. The humans ignored the warnings and kept attacking. The Harvesters then fired directly at the human ships, expecting to destroy them easily. But the human pilots did something that had never happened in thousands of years of Harvester attacks. When their ships were damaged and about to explode, pilots didn't try to escape. They steered their exploding ships directly into Harvester vessels. Lieutenant Mike Chen's fighter was hit by a Harvester energy beam that tore off one wing and set his engine on fire. Instead of ejecting from his doomed ship, he accelerated toward the nearest enemy vessel and rammed his fighter's nuclear reactor directly into their hull. The explosion tore a hole in the Harvester ship big enough to fly a transport through. Pilot Kate Williams watched her shields fail and her weapons systems shut down. Her ship was dead in space with 3 Harvester scouts approaching. She activated her ship's self-destruct system and waited until the enemy ships were close enough to examine her vessel. The explosion destroyed all 3 Harvester scouts. Captain Murphy watched from the Endeavor as his pilots sacrificed themselves to save Valari civilians they had never met. These Harvester ships are used to fighting people who value their own lives more than anything else, he said quietly. They don't know how to fight people who care more about protecting others. Alina had been monitoring Harvester communications during the battle. What she discovered changed everything they thought they knew about their enemy. Captain, the Harvesters are talking to each other. I've been analyzing their signals. They're confused. In all their recorded history, they have never encountered a species that willingly sacrifices itself for strangers. They don't understand human behavior at all. What do you mean? The Harvesters see death as the ultimate failure. Their entire culture is built around consuming and surviving. The idea of choosing death to save others is completely alien to them. They're trying to understand why humans keep fighting when fighting means dying. Dr. Rodriguez showed data from the battle. Look at this communication pattern. The Harvesters are sending requests back to their main fleet, asking for instructions on how to fight an enemy that doesn't behave logically. Captain Murphy studied the enemy communications. Lena, can you translate what they're saying to each other? Lena worked on her translation program for several hours. When she finally decoded the Harvester messages, what she found made everyone on the bridge feel cold with fear and excitement at the same time. They're scared, she said quietly. For the first time in thousands of years, the harvesters are actually scared. They're calling humans the poison species and the death seekers. They don't understand how to fight an enemy that becomes more dangerous when it's dying. Kethvie, who had been helping with the translation work, spoke up. Dr. Rodriguez, there's something else in their communications. They're talking about something called the Great Filter. They seem to believe that the galaxy was meant to test species, and that most species are supposed to fail the test. Alina felt her heart racing. Kethvie, what exactly are they saying? About this test? They seem to believe that they are the test. That their purpose is to destroy weak civilizations and leave only the strongest species to inherit the galaxy. But they also seem to think that no species was ever supposed to actually defeat them. Captain Murphy looked around his bridge at his officers. They were all thinking the same thing. The harvesters weren't just ancient destroyers. They were some kind of galactic selection system designed to eliminate civilizations that couldn't defend themselves, but the system had never been tested by humans. Alina, Captain Murphy said, send a message to all surviving Valari colonies. Tell them that help has arrived. Tell them that the species they called friends has arrived, and that we fight very differently than anyone the harvesters have ever faced. Alina smiled as she composed the message. For the first time since leaving Earth, she felt hope that they might actually win this impossible war. What should I tell them about humans, Captain? Captain Murphy looked out at the stars where enemy ships waited. Tell them that humans are the species that evolution designed to fight monsters. Tell them that we've been waiting our whole history for a fight that actually matters. Tell them that the harvesters picked the wrong species to threaten. Lena began transmitting the message to every Valari colony in the galaxy. For the first time in years, the alien survivors would receive a message. That wasn't a cry for help. It was a promise that the cavalry had finally arrived. The final battle began when the largest harvester ships in the galaxy appeared at the edge of the Vega system. Captain Murphy had never seen anything so terrifying. The motherships were each 50 miles long, dark as space itself, and covered in millions of smaller ships like insects on a giant beast.
How many ships are we looking at? Captain Murphy asked.
His science officer, Commander Lisa Carter, checked her scanners 3 times before answering. Captain, I count over 2,000 large ships, and maybe 50,000 smaller ones. This isn't just a fleet. This is their entire civilization. Dr. Alina Rodriguez was working frantically at her translation station. She had been analyzing harvester communications for days, and what she found changed everything they thought they knew about their enemy. Captain, you need to hear this, Alina said. I've decoded more of their ancient transmissions. The harvesters aren't just destroyers. They're a test created by a civilization that died millions of years ago. Captain Murphy left his command chair to look at Elena's work. What kind of test? The original creators of the harvesters built them as a way to make sure only the strongest species would survive to inherit the galaxy. Every few thousand years, the harvesters sweep through and destroy any civilization that can't defend itself. They were designed to be unbeatable by normal means. Zenthka, who had come aboard the Endeavor with other Valari leaders, listened to the translation with growing understanding. Dr. Rodriguez, this explains why the harvesters always give species a chance to surrender. They want to see how each civilization responds to impossible odds. Alina nodded. Exactly. But here's the important part. The creators never expected any species to actually beat the harvesters. The system was designed to eliminate everyone until only one perfect species remained. The harvesters themselves don't understand what to do if someone actually defeats them. Lieutenant Brandon Lee looked up from his weapons station. So we're fighting a test that was designed to be impossible? Yes. And the test is breaking down because humans don't follow the rules. Captain Murphy studied the massive enemy fleet approaching them. Alina, can you communicate with the harvester leaders? Can you tell them we want to talk? Alina worked at her station for several minutes. Then something unprecedented happened. The harvester fleet stopped moving. For the first time in galactic history, they responded to a communication request. The main screen flickered, and an alien voice spoke in perfect English. The translation system had learned human language from their communications. You are the poison species, the voice said. It sounded like many voices speaking together. You are the death seekers who do not behave according to pattern. We wish to understand why you fight when fighting brings extinction. Captain Murphy stepped forward. We fight because you're hurting our friends. Humans don't abandon people who need help. Friends, this concept does not exist in our data. Species compete. Species consume. Species survive or die. There is no... Friends, Alina realized something important. Captain, they literally don't understand friendship or cooperation. They've been alone for millions of years. They've never encountered species that help each other. You destroy yourselves to protect others who are not your offspring, the harvester voice continued. This behavior contradicts survival imperatives. Explain this malfunction. Captain Murphy almost smiled. It's not a malfunction. It's what makes us human. We protect people because it's right, not because we gain something from it. The harvester fleet was quiet for a long time. Then the voice spoke again, and this time it sounded confused and almost frightened. Our creators designed us to test species for worthiness. All species have failed the test by proving they valued survival over strength. But you do not value survival. You value ... others. This was not anticipated in our programming. Alina understood what was happening. They're having some kind of crisis. Their entire purpose was based on the assumption that all intelligent life is selfish. Humans are breaking their fundamental programming. The massive harvester motherships began to change. Parts of their hulls opened up, revealing technology that looked both mechanical and alive. The voice spoke again. We will now demonstrate why no species has survived the great test. Witness the full power of the harvesters. What followed was the most one-sided battle in human history. The harvester fleet unleashed weapons that could crack planets in half. Energy beams that could boil oceans. Swarms of fighter craft that blocked out the stars. The UES. Endeavor and its small group of support ships should have been destroyed in seconds. Instead, Captain Murphy ordered something that no military commander in galactic history had ever ordered. Ships, ramming speed. Target their motherships. Make every hit count. The human ships charged directly into the massive enemy fleet. When their weapons failed, they rammed enemy vessels. When their ships were destroyed, the crews ejected in smaller pods and continued attacking with whatever they had left. Sergeant Danny Price led a boarding party onto a damaged harvester ship. When they ran out of bullets, they fought with knives. When the knives broke, they used their bare hands and improvised weapons made from ship parts. Dr. Alina Rodriguez and the Valari scientist Kethve discovered something crucial during the battle. Captain, human viruses and bacteria are poisoning. The harvester biosystems, our blood is literally toxic to their living technology. Every human who dies on their ships is damaging them from the inside. The battle should have ended in minutes, with complete human defeat. Instead, it lasted for hours, as humans refused to accept the impossible odds. Every destroyed human ship took multiple harvester vessels with it. Every boarding party caused massive internal damage before being stopped. The harvesters, who had conquered thousands of civilizations, found themselves fighting an enemy that became more dangerous as it took casualties. Then something happened that changed galactic history. Forever, the harvester mothership nearest to the Endeavor suddenly stopped firing. Its biomechanical systems began shutting down one by one. The voice spoke again, but this time it sounded different, weaker, almost sad. We understand now. The test was flawed. Our creators believed that strength meant survival above all else. But true strength means choosing others over yourself. We have failed the test, not you. Lena worked frantically to maintain communication. What do you mean you failed? For millions of years, we destroyed civilizations and told ourselves it was necessary. We told ourselves we were making the galaxy stronger, but we were wrong. The galaxy needed protectors, not destroyers. The galaxy needed ... friends. Captain Murphy watched in amazement as harvester ships throughout the fleet began powering down their weapons. What's happening to them? Their programming is collapsing, Alina explained. They were designed to test for the strongest species. But they never considered that the strongest species might be one that protects the weak instead of destroying them. The harvester voice spoke one final time. We give you our knowledge and our ships. Use them to protect the species we failed to destroy. Be the guardians the galaxy needs. Be the friends that we could never understand. One by one, the massive harvester ships went dark. Their biomechanical systems died peacefully, leaving behind technology and knowledge accumulated over millions of years. The greatest threat in galactic history had chosen to surrender not because they were defeated, but because they finally understood what they should have been all along. Captain Murphy looked around his damaged bridge at his surviving crew. Had lost over half their people, but they had saved not just the Valari, but every species in the galaxy. Alina received a communication from Earth. Captain, we're getting signals from dozens of star systems. Species that have been hiding from the harvesters for thousands of years are coming out of hiding. They're all sending the same message. What message? Lena smiled as she translated. The incoming communications, they're asking if the humans who defeated the harvesters would be willing to be their friends. Captain Murphy looked out at the stars, knowing that humanity's real journey was just beginning. They had come to space looking for friends, and instead found out that the galaxy needed protectors. Lena sent a message to every species in the galaxy. Tell them that if they need friends, the humans will answer. Tell them that no one will ever have to call into the darkness alone again? The UES Endeavor, battered but victorious, began its new mission. They were no longer explorers or refugees. They were the galaxy's first line of defense against anything that threatened peaceful civilizations, and they would never again let a call for friendship go unanswered. Across the galaxy, species that had hidden in fear for millennia began to emerge. The age of the harvesters was over. The age of galactic friendship had begun, and it had all started because someone heard a cry for help. And humans had never been good at ignoring friends in need.